Hello, everybody. I'm Will,
And I'm Kristen.
and this is I'm watching The Last of Us, Season 1, Episode 6.
Kin.
This was a very good episode. It was another slower
Yeah.
episode, sort of coming off of the tumultuous events of last week.
Kansas City.
And we get a nice, and I think needed, time jump, 3-month skip forward.
Yeah.
It is beneficial for me with my sort of like suspension of disbelief and all that they were able to just sort of
get there.
Yeah. That they were able to spend 3 months just making it, and we can kind of fast forward some of their arc, some of their growth, some of their character progression and all that. We got some really great extended world building. I think it's so funny. It's a typical patented me observation that the times I come down hard on something, AKA, if you've seen one zombie show, you've seen them all. Is the times where
you're proven so completely wrong by the end of it.
Because this is what I've wanted. I've wanted to see different types of civilization in a post-apocalyptic situation.
Well, and you're totally right, because it's like, to jump mostly to the end of this episode, it's like, yeah, we encountered some raiders in this episode, but it's like we haven't been encountering raiders at every turn, just like we haven't been encountering infected and clickers at every turn. So it's more meaningful and impactful when we do finally see one. We're like, oh shit.
Well, and that's my issue anytime we're watching any of these movies that exist outside of like horror slasher, take them down one by one, and then there were none, is I'm sort of like, because the joke I make is I'm like, I would just kill myself. It's like, what's the point of surviving in this reality?
This makes a case for it.
Time and time again, sometimes 2 or 3 times an episode.
Yeah.
Because we met Marlon and Florence. Maybe the greatest characters I've ever seen in a work of fiction.
Graham Greene and Elaine Miles. High-fiving a million.
But with their very small role, it was just so informative of the world, this world, and what exactly your options are. And it just goes to show us that there are actual realities where you can have a life.
Yeah.
And the fact is, he even makes the comment where he's like, I've been doing this since before you were born.
Yeah.
And Joel is not.
He's not a spring
He's
chicken.
north of 35. Yeah. We'll put it that way.
That should really go on a t-shirt. We talk about it all the time.
Watch Marry Me, the Jennifer Lopez and Owen Wilson rom-com. It's better than its trailer.
Yeah.
But I just really like that, because in this same episode where, spoilers, fast forwarding more, where we do find Tommy and find out that he's married and pregnant, that his wife is having a child, kind of the first place that my mind would go was, what fresh hell? Like, what is even the point?
Literally, why?
But having met Marlon and Florence in the beginning of this episode, I'm like, oh, there's a real chance at, like, happiness, at, like, a life, you know?
And it's also, like, you know, obviously it's, the setup that they've got going in Jackson is, like, pretty sick. But in general, you can understand how you'd be like, why on earth would you bring a baby into this? But it's like, people still need to have sex, and there still need to be babies, or else, like, there's no point in just, like, knowing that when you die, there will be no people left. Like, that's insane.
Well, and also, I mean, I would imagine that the hope is this is something that's overcomable.
And sustainable, yeah.
That there's a reality where we could defeat this problem. And I did ask Will, and he didn't have much to offer me, but I was like, do you get it? Because this is one of the places my brain goes anytime I'm watching this type of world, is I'm like, do we ever find out about, like, Europe or Asia, or, like, what's happening elsewhere in the world? Because, like, some places might not have been hit as...
Yeah, I mean, you sort of have to imagine that, like, more locked down place, like North Korea is probably fine. That's, like, kind of a constant in...
Turns into a weird utopia.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of a constant in most zombie things, is they're like, well, North Korea was already, like, so cut off that, like, it's cool. And, like, islands are probably all right.
And so, as we mentioned, Joel and Ellie were able to make their way west of the river, which they were warned not to. And it turns out that was largely tall tales, that there was this kind of utopian-esque commune there, and they were trying to keep themselves under the radar, so they were perpetuating the idea that there was something horrors.
Terrible across the river, which I really enjoyed that conversation with the four of them, with Tommy and Maria and Joel and Ellie, because Ellie is like rightfully put out, where she's like, you took my gun.
I don't know what you're doing. Joel is showing.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, she already had so much of that in her anyway, but like, so she's just sort of like, we heard it was like terrible over here, and like you've been just leaving bodies all over. And it was really interesting, especially juxtaposed with the conversation later, that Maria was like, that those are the people who basically fucked around and found out. But then it's like later when she's talking, she's trying to warn
also,
Ellie.
I mean, I know it's like considered desecration, but they might have what you do to the body after the fact. You can make it look worse.
Sure. But it's like later she's like trying to warn Ellie about Joel. And it's sort of one of those interesting things where it's like Maria has only ever heard Tommy's like interpretation of Joel, and Ellie has direct contact and like direct information. She knows what's actually up with Joel and that he doesn't feel good about the bad things he did. But like Tommy, it feels like, has kind of put a lot of blame on Joel for even Tommy having done things.
Yeah, that kind of caught me.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to be like, what specifically are you talking? Like, what specific bad things are you talking about? Like,
they were killing people.
Oh, I mean, that part is clear, but that also kind of goes without saying. Like, I'm waiting for confirmation to be that they were doing this outbreak.
Like that contractors, sure.
Right? Like,
no, I totally get it, because
she's very certain.
Tommy was a soldier, and he was in Desert Storm, so he was already killing people that shouldn't have been getting killed.
Tommy seems flaky.
Tommy seems pretty flaky. I agree with that. I just thought it was interesting, the juxtaposition of like what we know of Joel and his behavior, and like what Ellie knows of Joel and his behavior, but seen through the lens of Tommy, who is like certainly partially trying to make himself look better to Maria as like a potential mate. And so I just
who was Regina Wesley,
really
and it was very nice seeing her. It was a very subtle performance, like it was a pretty straightforward, borderline gentle performance. Yeah. But our history with her on True Blood was inconsistent, to say the least.
And that's not her fault. That's the writers did her dirty, and that's not her fault.
Well, we don't know, but I'm just saying she was good in this. I liked seeing her in this, and it was
nice.
Like
she gave Ellie a haircut.
Lunch with an old friend.
Yeah, she gave her a haircut. She gave her a Diva cup, which I had to Google. They were indeed mass produced in 2003.
Got in right under the wire.
Right under the wire with Diva cups. So that
get the drugs out.
Go. That stuff was all very nice. I appreciated that. And then
I love the femaleness, because this is the second time now that we've addressed
that Ellie menstruates.
Yeah.
it's very as a woman, it is very like helpful is a weird way to put it. It's comforting and normalizing, and I like that it exists in this show, because also like we aren't having to have like a really weird, awkward, like, Joel, I started my period conversation. It's just like she is handling her own shit, and then another wiser woman is like, here is how you can more easily handle your shit going forward. I really like all of that. I was also going to say Maria spilled the beans about Sarah, because even though it's been more than 3 months, Ellie still didn't know that Joel had a daughter. So she finds that out. Then they had a really amazing scene.
Another thing that was interesting was I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop with Jackson. And if it happens,
secretly they're cannibals.
Well, the ones who walk away from O'Malley's, I was waiting for that kind of like hidden in the pit, so that there's one child living in poverty. And if it happens, it didn't happen in this episode.
Yeah.
They managed to get the power plant working.
Well, they're like they rigged it up to the dam.
Well, her timeline, her like, we've been doing this for 9 years. I was like, that's plausibly enough time to get this stuff up and running. Yeah. And I mean, I know that they're on a mission, but I sort of like, on one hand, it would suck having your brother just sort of like peace out. On the other, I was kind of like,
I would just
Just gonna stay there.
The thing for me is like, why don't we stay like a week? Like, why don't we stay a week, like rest up, recover, and then we'll get there. Because that's the thing too, is by the very nature of this being adapted from a video game, obviously by the time they get to the university that has the like lab, it's going to be abandoned.
That's not annoying me as much as I was afraid it was going to.
Mm-hmm.
The procedural element of it.
Yeah. Well, it's because they are always making progress. They just don't ever get to the place.
But to stay a little bit on theme, Mandalorian lost me. And granted, we're only 5 episodes in, and Mandalorian I watched 2 seasons of, but I am enjoying it so far. And I think that there's a little bit of an insinuation that we could see some people again. I mean, not many that we've seen thus far.
Well, Tommy and Maria are still there. They're safe behind. And Marlon and Florence are still kicking in there. Although Ellie did steal a rabbit. We don't know if that's the make or break rabbit for them, but...
So they did... Joel did cave and escorted Ellie to...
Well, it's like there was such a buildup to it also, though, because, like, Maria took Ellie... They were all having, like, a movie night, essentially, and she took her there, but then she, like, escaped, and Joel was trying to fix his shoes, and Tommy came in, and he basically spilled everything to Tommy. He was like, you know... She is immune.
And that is noteworthy the dog didn't pick up on it, which I would believe that a drug dog is more fallible than a machine.
Probably. Also, I
mean, if she's like not...
I do believe she's only like technically infected. So it's not, I feel like it's not active.
Like she might not, like it wouldn't smell it.
Yeah. So he does tell her that she's immune, and he's like, but you have to take her, because throughout the episode, he is having panic attacks. He's like...
Duh, you idiots who didn't know that and thought maybe he had like a heart condition or something.
Didn't call you an idiot.
The two of you were like, Rachel was like, clearly all of this unprocessed trauma is presenting itself. And I was like, clearly.
Yeah, he literally has never dealt with the trauma of Sarah. And so
he will just drop dead.
He will just
it will. The clock will tick.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, he keeps on kind of having panic attacks, and he's essentially like begs Tommy to take her instead. Like he's like checking all the boxes. He's like, is it super dangerous? Is it a suicide mission? People have gone and come back. Like, it's gonna be fine, right? And he's like, I need you to take her, because I can't, if I stay with her, it's gonna be Sarah all over again. And so Tommy agrees, and somehow Ellie overhears. I didn't notice how she did. Maybe there's a cutscene or something. Maybe there's a deleted scene.
I mean, it's within character that she was probably lurking about in the rafters, but
yeah, so she hears, and so she's pissed when he gets back to the little house that they're staying in. And so I also just loved that when when we cut back to her in the morning, she was just like ready and waiting. She was just like awake and dressed, and she's all packed.
14.
Yeah, it just was like...
They're resilient.
But she was so pissed still. Like, it was like she like angry packed and got dressed.
That trauma will manifest itself in 20 years in a panic
with
attack.
a heart palpitation. And then, Joel felt bad, and so he was like, no, like, you can choose. And she was like, all right, let's go, you and me. And so they left Tommy and Maria.
I think I got Joel's logic, but I was a little bit kind of on Tommy's side, where I was like, I mean, he's finally settled, which feels like an accomplishment, like 3 ways over.
For Tommy,
yeah. And I'm like, you can't take away...
his security.
Like, yeah.
So it took them like 5 days to get to the university they were trying to go to. And they made it, into the building.
It seems like they evacuated.
Yes,
and
it doesn't seem like they're...
Missouri?
It looked like Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City.
Missouri's back east, so I think they were continuing west. But they saw the like firefly stamps and stuff, and there's like just monkeys running wild.
Well, horrible, but horrible ethically, and also horrible because monkeys. I don't fuck with monkeys. But also just kind of cool and interesting, and another one of those little details that the colony just kind of flourished a little bit, and we didn't have to deal with any like, because again, a more sensationalized show, they would have been fending off monkeys left and right, like fucking Jumanji. Like,
yeah. I also think it was interesting that like after Joel and Ellie kind of blowing up at each other in the house at Jackson, it did kind of like open floodgates because they were just like chit-chatting the whole 5 days to get to the university, which I thought was just sweet. Like, he was explaining football to her. She was like asking questions. She was very curious about the university and like what people did there.
Her how to shoot.
And taught her how to shoot the rifle and stuff. So it was really, really darling, actually. I really liked it quite a lot. And so yeah, it does look like it was abandoned, and then they hear raiders outside. They almost get away.
Mm-hmm.
But Joel gets shanked with the end of a baseball bat. Not before he totally breaks the neck of that guy, which was so hot. But we are in a tough spot because he's fallen off the horse, and Pedro Pascal is quite a lot bigger than Bella Ramsey, so she doesn't know how she's going to help him.
It takes I'm not worried because next week is like a flashback, which another thing that you called. You're like, well, clearly, like 3 or 4 episodes ago, you're like, clearly we're getting flashbacks with Storm Reed. And I was like, why would you assume that's a flashback?
Because I know stuff about the video game.
Oh.
From Will. I'm not just magic.
Like, where are you popping off all of this?
No, I know stuff about the video game from Will. He's like told me about stuff.
So because of that, I'm like, okay, I think Joel's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Other shows have pulled that stunt, Lost.
That's true.
But
I do also, I've been seeing lots of stuff on the internet that are like, this episode of The Last of Us was really great. I love how they skipped the part where I just kept getting shot over and over and over again trying to get past the monster. It's been like a really...
That's why I can't do video games.
Not video games like this,
I can't
for
do
sure.
video games.
Yeah. But this show the whole time has been like a real treat watching. So we got 3 episodes left. I'm really, really excited. I really enjoyed this episode. It was, again, like a nice break. And you're right. It, like, being able to find these, like, moments of peace in between the, like, traveling is always really fun. And it just
gives you, like I said, it gives you a reason to
give a crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm here for it. I loved it. I hope that we do see Tommy and Maria again, because it was nice. It was nice.
I totally forgot to talk about Michael Douglas fisting the prolapse spaceship in Ant-Man Quantumania, and yes, we'll leave that in.
You did. Yeah, I forgot about it too.
Leave that into this Last of Us review.
Like the least
because you said, "Oh my god," and I said, "Explain it a better way. Tell me how that's not what happened."
You're right.
So when you're done with this, go see Ant-Man Quantumania.
Ooh, I mean, if you dare. All right, well, we'll be back next week for the episode with Storm Reed, and then let us know.
Are we gonna get Ashley Johnson?
Oh, at some point, but I don't know when. So
cool.
All right. Bye.